Welcome to the Bleep Bulimia podcast with Dr. Betsy Holmberg, award-winning psychologist and author of Unkind Mind. Hello, everyone. I am Lori Ann. I am the host of Bleep Bulimia, and I'm really glad to be back after 5 months. And my guest, Dr. Betsy Holmberg, is perfect to be here with us today because she does talk about overthinking. So I want to introduce her. She is an award-winning psychologist and author of Unkind Mind, specializing in overthinking and negative self-talk. Thank you so much for being here today.
It's so great to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's such a pleasure. So I just would love you to start and give us an idea of how what inspired you to write that, the book of Unkind Mind.
Yeah. So I'm a psychologist by training, and I've worked in psychology my whole career, but I went through a really painful divorce where my husband left me and I had a 15-month-old, and it was confusing, and we were in California and I'm from the East Coast, and so it was just a mess of a time, and I got very, very low. And I went on an antidepressant, and that really helped. And my family came, and that helped. And so I got through that time. But it was about 3 years later, and we had moved Coast, and it felt like life was kind of settled. And every time I tried to get off my antidepressant, I felt these negative thoughts just flare inside me, like, you can't do this, you're not giving enough to your kid, like this, none of this is going to work. I mean, like, everyone's going to judge you, no one wants to be around you, you're the single mom with all these other, people that have husbands, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have to go back on my antidepressant. And then if I would up my dose, the thoughts would go away. And I thought, this is crazy. Like, am I stuck on this for the rest of my life because I feel so badly about myself after this divorce? Like, has this broken me, essentially? And the thing is I am a therapist, so I knew what would go on in therapy. I was like, okay, I see what that is, fine. I needed something different. And so I went into the literature, and what I found blew my mind. And I was like, okay, so this is where my negative self-talk is coming from. And it was immediately after that I was able to start titrating off and start feeling whole in a way that I hadn't felt for, 5 years at that point. So it was great.
That's beautiful. We were talking earlier, and you did say that we were talking about food and so on and so forth. And I was telling you that I was an overachiever, and you were saying that you struggled with an eating disorder as well. Uh, how much of that, like, because you were saying it's about what other people are going to, how they perceive you. And so you're always trying to show that I can do this, I can do anything, I'm Superwoman or something like that. But it does take a toll on you.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, that period of my life was more during college, and I very much was looking from a perspective of outside in. It was all, how are people perceiving me? How am I getting judged right now? Are they thinking about me? And so honestly, this overthinking has been part of my life forever. And so I think the divorce just kicked it to a place where it got so negative that I actually had to heal it. But overthinking is a huge part of our behavior when we are experiencing eating disorders, and it also feels like it really helps. Like it's kind of a coping mechanism. Like, eating disorder is a coping mechanism for that, and we can talk through the neuroscience of how that actually happens, which is pretty wild.
Yes, I'd love that.
Okay, so in a nutshell, it feels like our whole experience is just us, right? And we're having all these thoughts, and this is our experience and our emotions and our feelings. But what we actually see is that there are two thought networks. The first one is the central executive, and this sits on the outside of our brain. So this is our most sophisticated and evolved thought network, and these are all the thoughts you choose. So if you focus on something, you're using your central executive. Interestingly, embedded deeper in the brain, which is a more primitive place, is the default mode network. And this network runs automatically. So they first saw this when they were putting people into brain imaging studies, and they said, okay, go do the task. And then whenever the task was done, they found these same areas lighting up consistently. And they're like, what is this? Like, why is this going on? And they're like, hey, what are you thinking about? And the person's like, nothing. And it just fired. And so they started studying this and understanding this more. And so this thought network is automatic, and it harkens back where it's positioned in the brain more to our hunter-gatherer days when we were in clans of about 150 people. And it was an incredible evolutionary feat because it looks outside in. And so it's examining the whole clan and saying, okay, what are the norms? What am I supposed to be doing? What's my role? What do I have to do to not get kicked out of the clan? Because if you got kicked out, you die. So it was this very like awareness-based structure that always focuses to you and says what you're not doing well enough. So it's kind of like a bad parent, like an overprotective parent, because it's not coaching you. It's not saying anything positive. It's looking around and it sees someone that's wearing something that's more on trend. And it's like, well, your clothes are ugly, or you don't look good, or you're fat. Like if you see, anything in social media and this person has this gorgeous body, it's like, well, your body's ugly, and you can be doing something different. And the thing that got me was that this is automatic. So I'm not the one creating these thoughts. This is an evolutionary mechanism that I somehow misperceived my entire life was actually me. And so I think it reminds me of, videos where you see someone that gets shocked and they're like, ah, and they freak out and we laugh, right? Because we're like, oh, isn't the human body funny? But these thoughts are exactly like that. They're a human body thing that we experience. And we can really get ourselves into trouble when we think they're us and when we believe them, you know? So this is the thing that shifted my life.
Beautiful. So I was watching you on Kim Talks and I found that interesting. You love the iceberg.
I did back then. I thought it was so cool.
I think it's cool too. I know the story and I found that interesting where you're talking about if you can just give a little overview of the iceberg so that the listeners are going to
Yeah,
understand
I
a little
don't know
bit
if they
better.
do this in intro to psychology classes. I'm getting kind of old, but back then, when they always put up a picture of an iceberg and they said, okay, 10 to 20% of a person is all the stuff you see. So it's what they're saying to you, it's their body language, it's their behaviors, etc. And then, 80 to 90% is all the stuff that happens underneath the surface that you don't see. So these are your beliefs, your values, your internal thoughts, things like that. And back then I thought it was so cool because I was like, oh, it's this dark place we all have to explore, and it's the true heart of who we are. And it's very interesting that I feel like science is moving away from this concept of like a subconscious, let's say, or, this deep inner workings. And we've way more gotten to which like brain areas talking, and then also the nervous system. And I know you've had folks on talking about polyvagal theory and the nervous system and how we can go from being frozen to being, flight or flight to being socially connected and engaged. And if that system is not flexible, if we can't move in and out of our stress responses, we can get stuck. And if we're stuck in a stress response, we will look to other things to help us survive because it's so scary. And this is one place where the DMN shines. So it connects deeply to your stress system. So it will say, okay, what can we do? How can we make ourselves feel better? Blah, 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 blah. And when this gets really intense, that is major depressive disorder. So when the functional connectivity of the DMN is high, it literally, that's what they see with people with MDD. They also see it in anxiety disorders. So think of them like muscles. And if you're listening to your DMN all the time and you're stuck in this mode of your negative self-talk and you're believing everything it's saying, that DMN gets very, very strong. And that's what creates depression and anxiety. and suicidality and all those other things. And this is now one of the pathways that researchers are exploring is addiction is a way to shut up the DMN, but it also then strengthens the DMN. And so there's a lot of conversation around how that is a pathway we've used to shut down the DMN before we knew what it was. As a way to get like freedom from ourselves.
Interesting. And so they're working on, is there a way to deal with that without medication?
Yes. So first of all is this awareness of what this thing is, because like a lot of people turn to alcohol, disordered eating is exactly similar. I mean, it's all the same pathway, and it's that DMN has gotten so strong and so intense, and the thoughts are so overwhelming that when you take a drink, alcohol actually disrupts the functional connectivity of the DMN, and that's why you feel so free. That's why suddenly you don't care about social norms, and you're like, oh, like I feel so much better, like, I feel like I can have fun. But the problem is also, since the DMN is our behavior police keeping us in the clan, we might do things we might not want to do. We might say things we might not want to say. And so the next day we wake up and our DMN comes raging back on and goes, what the hell did you just do last night? And it makes the DMN ultimately stronger. So it's such a catch-22. I mean, I want to give like every human a hug, because that's so hard. We finally find something that works to shut this thing up. And yet it actually then puts us further into the trap of the DMN. And so first of all, having that understanding is hugely helpful to be able to say, I don't need a drink, or I don't need to eat a bunch of food to stop this. I know what this is now, and I can separate myself. And that's what the book goes into, on how to do it, how to understand it, and what to listen to instead.
Oh, that's fantastic. Like that's definitely something that I really highly recommend. Goodness. So, so we have the book. Just an interesting transition that you went through to get to this. And you're still working on it. Like I know the book is out. Is there, I mean, other than buying the book, is there anything that you could tell our,
Oh my gosh, of course. Yes.
right?
No, like let's start
Okay.
talking about it. Yeah. So the main thing is you can think of these two thought networks like a light switch. So it's either or. Either you're listening to your DMN or you're using your CEN. And so the main thing you want to do is to activate your CEN. So this is why meditation is so powerful, because just listen to the concept of it. So it's like, okay, you just want your thoughts to flow by, and then you focus on your breath, or you focus on a chant, something like that. Well, essentially what they're instructing people to do is to say, ignore your DMN and focus on your breath, aka activate your CEN. So the whole thing of how meditation is this powerful, wonderful thing for wellness is that it's just working with those two brain networks and getting us to the CEN and shutting down the DMN. That's it. And so we can do that any way we want. So it's what is the passions for us, and what is the thing that makes us feel a lot of focus. Like some people, it's reading. Other people, it's walking in nature. Other people really connect to their CEN through gratitude. It all depends on, and this is where it's fun. Like it's not a one size fits all. We don't all need to be meditating, we just need to find things that capture our attention and whenever we do that, we're going to turn off the DMN. I have to give a caveat here though, and I felt this writing the book. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be a guru. I'm going to be walking through like the, grocery store. I'm going to feel amazing. And I had one bad night's sleep and it all went to like hell in a handbasket. So my DMN came flaring back up, and everything I tried to do to stop it, I couldn't stop it. And I was like, what is this? So I had to look into it. And there are times, like if we're tired, if we're super stressed, if we're really emotional, that the body and the brain, the nervous system shuts down the CEN and you're stuck listening to your DMN. So it's important to know that so that, the next time you get sick, mine always is nasty when I get sick. And so when I get in that place, then I can't shut it off. I can't go to the CEN. And so what I do then is I ignore it. And I'm centered on that Kim things. I think of it as the Real Housewives of me. And I think of it like a television that's like in the background that I don't want to listen to. And so it's going, but I'm not giving it any credence. I'm not believing what it says. I'm not feeling like I have to process it afterwards. I'm just like hearing them and I'm thinking, wow, that is really aggressive to say, but I'm not attaching to it, you know?
That would take time to get okay with that.
Yeah, it
I mean,
does.
particularly the overthinking. I mean, it's just as silly as honest to goes. I gotta tell the story because it's really stupid. But so our grocery store is giving out stamps. So with the stamps, the more you collect, then there's 4 days in the month of April that you can go in and get the percentage. So it goes 5%, 10%, 15%. So I noticed that I did some home deliveries and they didn't give me my receipt with my stamps, but I didn't know this until I read the card on the third delivery that said March 6th. So I called them up. I go, I didn't get my stamps. No problem. We'll get them to you. That was 15 stamps and I only needed 7 to make it to the 15%. So I'm all excited. I go to the grocery store to pick it up. Picked up a couple of groceries, put the envelope not in my pocket. I put it in my cart. And then I guess at some point when I'm looking to see if there's any cars going when I'm crossing, it must have flown out. I lost them. And I thought, oh my goodness, I was not meant to have those 15 stamps. But when I'm bringing this, I overthought that. Like you stupid. Why didn't you put it? Like, how dumb is that? Like, you should have put it in your pocket. And then you're just, overthinking about, if I just had done that, but now I don't have my 15 stamp. It's stamps. Maybe someone out there found them and that needed them more than I did, right?
You
So I
know,
had to,
we make meaning in our brains about stuff that just happens. And I feel like the meaning always comes back to like, I'm stupid. I shouldn't
yeah,
have been so careless. Blah, blah,
yep,
blah, blah, blah. I mean, we beat this network beats us up. And
yeah,
and that's such a perfect example because we do it over everything.
yep.
It's little things, it's big things, and it's moments of every single day. I mean, I beat myself up when I feel tired. I beat myself up like that. I got sick. I can't control that. And so we start to step back and see how often this brain area is activated and like how often we're listening to it is startling that like, oh, no wonder why I was feeling so depressed, or no wonder I was so anxious because this thing's been running the show and not me.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, that
crazy.
makes a lot of sense. I guess the awareness is the most important. I mean, it's just like when I mean, in February 11th, I went through my 14th year of recovery, so I was really excited.
Woohoo!
And funny, I should have done a podcast, just me saying, "Hey, I did it." I'll do that on the 15th year.
Okay.
Um, but where was I going with that? Yeah, the first thing though for me at the onset of my recovery was being very acutely aware of what was triggering this. And once you have that awareness and it grows, it's wonderful. It's a savior really, because you say, oh, you're feeling that way that used to trigger, don't do that. It's like if you're doing something you hate to do, stop, because you're going to want to go to the fridge and do that instead. um because you can put things off if you're not in the mood at that moment. Like, just give yourself that grace. That is, I think, the first place to start, right, is the awareness of it.
And it's so absolutely
Yeah.
100%. And what's so sad to me about it is when we listen to this voice, it disconnects us from loving ourselves. It's impossible to love yourself when you're listening to this voice and you're identifying with this voice because its whole job is to just beat you up to keep you in the clan. And that's one of the things that's surprising about recovery is then reconnecting with your heart, which interestingly connects to the CEN. So things that you
Okay.
love I mean, it makes sense in a way. Like things that you love are very easy to focus on. If you are in a brand new romantic relationship and you feel totally enamored with that person, it's very easy to focus on that person. It's very hard to not to focus on other things in your life, because you just want to focus on that one person. Um, the default mode connects to the gut. So all those nerves, IBS, all of that kind of thing, that's all DMN, survival mode. Whereas the heart is your focus. And so the more we can separate with that awareness away from the default mode, the more we can then connect with our hearts and what we really love in the world and loving ourselves for being a fallible like human with the crazy hardware we've got that we're just dealing with, but we can be gentler with ourselves when we get out of the DMN.
So when you're in the DMN though, okay, so let's say that, I was calling myself stupid, but then my other side sister says, you don't talk like that. So can you argue it? Like, because I argue mine all the time. So I'm just wondering, is that what I'm doing? Because I'll come out of a state just because this other, it's like I'm two people in one. And it
It's
sounds
so
like you are,
true. That's
right?
so true. You are. You literally are your DMN. And then there's that self part of you that's behind the DMN that's like, no, you're not. Like,
Right?
this isn't right. And so, like, that is a perfect way to see what it is and that is that awareness you're talking about is there is a voice in you that's like, that's not true because the DMN's not true. It's made up. It's not meant for our modern world. That's like number one. Like we have so many clans. We see so many versions of us that we're supposed to be according to society and our culture and our families and our schools and like everything else. And it was meant to be with like 50 people, with like one family of the 50 people. And so it is like, it's short circuiting. It can't figure out modern life. And then we are all the bearers of that, and we have the depression as a result. And listening to that voice that's saying that's not true is amazing. And now you have even more ammo for it because now that voice
Right?
can say, oh, that's my DMN.
Right?
Yes.
Be quiet. I don't want you here.
Yeah, time
I
for you
love
to
it.
go away. Yeah.
Right? No, that's really good. And that's again another part of so I really believe this is amazing because that was also part of my recovery was to learn to be very aware of my negative thought and talk. I mean, thought too, whatever. And my mother was funny. So I'm so stupid. I'm so dumb. And I turned to her and I go, stop it. You're gonna start believing it. Like,
Yeah.
right? Because I guess we
100%. She is
so
then making her DMN verbal, and then
yeah.
you're hearing it and you're thinking, oh, that's what a person needs to be. I think that was one of the things that was interesting going into this is that we all have one, and it's all saying its own version of negative Nancy survival talk. And so, like when someone's being mean over there, like what's their DMN saying? Or if we're worried about being judged by them, they're just as worried about being judged by us because they have a DMN too, And so, like, I feel like I've been able to see a lot more compassion for all of us knowing this now because you can see how we try to shift ourselves according to what our DMNs are saying and we all have different ones. And that's, it's a hard, like, it makes socializing really challenging in a way. The social judgments can feel so strong, but everyone's feeling them, and that
Yeah.
levels the playing field.
That's another interesting thing too, because when you're explaining this too, I also see this definitely in the workplace. You have that, you're very aware of that. There is those. Um, I'm not very clannish. I'm very much like I heard you say, I'm an introvert. I'm very good at being an extrovert when the time comes, but I spend most of my time alone with my dogs. And then I spend it with my mother and my daughter, but I don't go out much and I don't need to. Whereas when I was younger, it seemed like I was a lot more social and a lot more extroverted. I'm at the point now where I'm quite happy alone.
Well,
So,
that's so interesting to me. That is your clan. You found your clan. And what a great
okay.
thing to have a clan of dogs, because
Yeah.
dogs are unconditional love, you know?
Yes.
So they can connect us to our hearts because we know that they're not DMNing. And so that's part of what makes that relationship so beautiful. I have a dog. I love my dog too, because I get to, it helps silence my DMN because he doesn't have one. And like it's, you have just been very selective with your clan, which is an incredibly healthy thing to do. There are too many clans in the world. The more selective we can be, the healthier we can be.
Definitely. And it's interesting as well where, in you're talking about tribal. I mean, we've moved into a society now where families are split. You'll have somebody across like you were saying, you were from the east, your family were at the west. It's just very broken up. A lot of times it's not like it used to be where everybody lived in the same neighborhood, like you'd be living next to your parents or just a block away or whatever the case, or at least even in the same city. Um, and I know that my mother struggles a bit with that because our family is a little bit segregated. She was very much from the generation of, the mommy who has her little, her children and then her grandchildren and her great grandchildren, and they all come and they all visit. And we don't get that. So and that's difficult for her because her clan, she feels, has been broken apart. So that is one of her issues.
Yeah.
But you're right there, though. I'm not bothered by it because I found my own plan. And even if they do go, even if they do decide not to have anything to do with me, it doesn't bother me because if I think the important thing is how I'm saying that if you really want to be with me, you'll be with me. And if you don't, I'll let you go. I'm not going to go running after you and say, hey, come on, like I might have used to do, I might have
Hmm.
just say, oh, what's going on? Can please let's make this right? But it's like, yeah,
Yeah. It made
yeah.
me look at divorce in a whole new way and breakups. I mean, breakups are always so hard. Like whether you're 15 years old or you're 44 years old, breakups are tough. And I thought, oh, so this is what it is that you've literally made a clan with someone. And like let's say it's a marriage. That is the deepest clan you possibly can make. You are sharing everything. And then that clan breaks apart. You feel like you're dying. Because the brain is struggling with that idea of your clan is over. And that process of trying to rebuild your life and create a new clan and a new sense of security in the world, takes so much time because it's so devastating to the nervous system, to the brain, and to everything our little human hardware and software is designed to do. And I feel like that's not spoken about enough. We all talk about, oh, 50% of marriages end in divorce. But when you go through one, you're like, this is what everyone is going. This is awful.
This
Like,
is what
it's
50% of
miserable.
the people married are going through. Yeah,
Like,
exactly
why
right.
aren't we talking about this?
Right.
So, and that's where we can we can be gentler with ourselves, knowing that it has like something like a breakup or a divorce would glitch your human hardware like there's no other. And so we really have to take care of ourselves through those experiences because they're hard.
And you're exactly right too, that the DMN will really rise up during that time. Like, and I mean, you lose friends, you feel horrible, you feel like a failure. It's like it's all these like, bleh, and you're not. And I know I don't regret it. It was a very difficult period, but I don't regret it at all. And I never really had the desire to go back, but I still had to transition through that understanding the heartbreaking. Like it really is painful.
Yeah.
Um, but once you get to the other side, it's like, yeah, this is was for the better, and I'm living the perfect, happy life. Not perfect, nothing's perfect, but I kind of joke around. I never wanted to get married, never wanted to have kids, but I did. So I have no what ifs about that. But now I'm living the single life that I always thought that I was gonna live for my whole life. So I have the best of both worlds. Right?
That's wonderful. And you've now created a new clan that probably fits you and your heart better than what the old clan was. And that's that growth process, which is so stinking hard, but getting to that other side, you're like, oh no, this is okay and this is good. And I am well, and that's amazing to say at the end of it. You don't feel that in the beginning.
No, not at all.
No.
I don't know about you, but I know that I spent a few days in bed.
I remember I was at my son's preschool and this woman was talking about going through a divorce, and she said, I literally was on the floor. I could not get up out of the floor, and everyone was just sitting listening to this like that's normal. And I'm like, guys, no, that is an awful, that is such pain to not be able to get off the floor. And she said it jokingly, but it was her truth, which was beautiful that she shared it, because it starts to normalize how really painful that experience is.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh yeah, that's normal. I was like, wait till you go through it. It's not. No.
Yeah, everyone's different, but I was, yeah, for a while there, I just did not want to get out of bed. Thank God my daughter was with me. My boys chose to stay with him. We gave them the option. My daughter stayed with me. She was a godsend, honest to goodness, to help. Like, that did help through that period. But even that, and then you feel bad because you know that you're depressed and your poor kid's watching you depressed and you're trying not to show it, and that's hard. Yeah.
And that's where everyone knowing, like, okay, the DMN has gotten crazy strong. This is a DMN hotspot. Like, you will be depressed. And this is all normal and natural for what the situation is that this human is going through. And we will get through it, is hugely healing for people.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate your time. This has been absolutely lovely. I could probably talk for another hour, but before we go, I would love you to let people know where to find your book and where to find you. So please do share.
Yeah, you got it. So the book is Unkind Mind, and it's available wherever books are sold, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and everything. And I'm at www.betsyholmberg.com, and I'm also on social media. I don't post tons, but you'll see stuff that's going on with me there. So yeah, feel free to follow me, and thanks so much for listening, guys.
And thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Be sure to visit me at bleepbulimia.com.